Like we agreed, I'll set you up with a new identity so you can leave, and I'll give you a sum of money. Are you sure you want to go? Leo Hayes stared at the photos of his wife wrapped around another man, his heart plunging into an icy sea. I'm sure. The person on the other end of the line paused, then said, Okay, but don't be too broken up about it. Your wife getting with my ex-boyfriend is a match made in hell. The least we can do, the ones they dumped, is get together and piss those two bastards off. That evening, just like any other, Leo cooked a table full of Isabel's favorite dishes. He lit the candles and waited for his wife to come home from work. He waited from 7 in the evening until 10 at night. The front door never opened. The world outside was silent. Leo pulled out his phone, checked the time, and scrolled through his contacts. His thumb hovered over the word wife for a moment before finally swiping past it to call the company's security desk. Is Ms. Vance still working late? I didn't want to bother her, so I ordered some food. Could you bring it up to her for me in a bit? The guard recognized his voice. Mr. Hayes, he said respectfully, Ms. Vance left about 2 hours ago. She probably had a client dinner. Leo's expression didn't change. Okay, thanks for the help, he said. He spent the rest of the night staring at his phone, but he never received a single message from Isabel. Before, she would have always given him a heads up if she had a dinner or an event. Tonight was different. It was probably because the person she was with was very important. Leo looked at the table of cold food. With a blank face, he stood up, scraped every dish into the trash can, cleaned up, and went upstairs to bed. Isabel Vance didn't come home that night. The next morning, Leo heard the sound of an engine in the driveway. He got out of bed on instinct and hurried downstairs. The woman was just walking through the door. He met her, opened the shoe cabinet, and placed a pair of women's slippers on the floor. Did you pull an all-nighter? You have dark circles under your eyes. Isabel mumbled a response, changed her shoes, and turned around naturally. Leo took off her coat. Go take a shower first, then get some rest. Isabel was used to his meticulous care. Leo thought she'd go straight upstairs, but she didn't move. She just stood there, her complicated gaze lingering on his face. Holding her coat, Leo touched his own cheek, confused. What's wrong? Nothing, the woman said, looking away. I'll tell you later. A premonition settled in Leo's heart. He smiled. Okay. It seemed he wouldn't have to be the one to break the silence after all. Sure enough, half an hour later, Isabel placed a divorce agreement on the table. I'm sorry. He's back. You can ask for whatever you want, and I'll do my best to give it to you. Leo knew exactly who he was. Ethan, Isabel's childhood sweetheart. They had grown up together, and Isabel had practically worshipped the ground he walked on. If Ethan had asked for the moon, she probably would have tried to find a way to get it for him. But their storybook romance ended in high school. Ethan left the country for love, leaving Isabel behind, heartbroken and unable to move on for a long, long time. Seeing him with his head down, silent, Isabel assumed the news had hit him hard. Don't worry, she said in a low voice. It'll be a month before the divorce is final. I'll still come home like usual during that time to give you a chance to adjust. Leo took a deep breath, flexing his fingers before picking up the pen and signing his name on the agreement. Isabel watched his hand tremble slightly, a flicker of pity in her eyes. She pressed her lips together but ultimately said nothing, taking the papers and heading to the study. Leo watched her go. She hadn't taken 2 steps before she pulled out her phone, a relaxed, happy smile spreading across her face as she texted someone. He looked away, picked up his own phone, and dialed Ava Lynn's number again. She brought up the divorce. Let's go with your plan. Get me a new identity. I want to go to Chicago. Ava chuckled softly. Going that far away? If you're going to make a clean break, you have to make it clean, right? If you can't hold on to it, you have to let it go. After hanging up, Leo felt a wave of relief wash over him. He opened his notes app and set a countdown timer for the divorce. In 1 month, he could take the money from both Isabel and Ava, leave this place, and start his new, carefree life as a wealthy man. Now that the divorce was happening, Leo certainly wasn't going to stay at the company. He had poured a lot of his own blood, sweat, and tears into Vance Corp, and he wanted to handle the transition properly before he left. He and Isabel left the house one after the other. He went straight to the office, organized his current projects, and rushed to finish anything that could be dealt with quickly. One document required Isabel's signature. Keeping it professional, Leo took the file to the CEO's office. Just as he raised his hand to knock, the door opened from the inside. A man in a sharp Armani suit stood there, holding a coffee cup. Seeing Leo, Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. Then he smiled apologetically. "Leo, it's you. Look at me. I've been back for days. So busy with Isabel that I completely forgot you worked here too. Did I startle you? Sorry about that. I should have told you I was back sooner." Even if he hadn't, Leo would have known the second he arrived. The day Ethan returned, Isabel had booked an entire club for his welcome home party, complete with a giant heart made of roses at the entrance. Everyone in their circle was envious, and photos and videos of the event had flooded his social media feed. It would have been impossible for Leo not to know. It was in that moment that he understood he could never replace Ethan in Isabel's heart. Thankfully, this ridiculous marriage was about to end. Leo smiled calmly. "It's fine. It's not too late to find out now. Are you looking for Isabel?" Ethan stepped closer, raising an eyebrow. "She's probably not available right now. If you need something, you can tell me and I'll pass it on." His suggestive tone was clearly meant to tell Leo one thing, just how close they were and what they had just been doing. Leo's face remained impassive. "It's a work matter. If she's busy, I'll come back later." He turned to leave. "Wait." Ethan suddenly reached out to grab him. He stumbled, and the coffee cup fell, shattering on the floor. The remaining coffee splashed all over Ethan's suit. "Leo!" He looked helpless, staring down at his stained clothes as his eyes quickly reddened. "You can just say it if you're upset. I think of you as a friend. I was just going to ask you to dinner." "How could you?" Before he could finish, a figure emerged from the office. Seeing Ethan's disheveled state, Isabel's face darkened as she addressed Leo. "Leo, if you have a problem, take it up with me. What do you get out of bullying Ethan?" "Bullying?" She didn't even bother to ask what happened before passing judgment. Leo looked into her sharp eyes and felt a sting in his heart. But it was almost over. There was no point in dwelling on it. He said calmly. Mr. Chun stumbled on his own. "He's right, Isabel." Ethan grabbed her arm as if to prevent a fight. "It was my fault. Don't blame Leo." His words only made Isabel's glare at Leo colder. "Leo, don't burn through the last bit of goodwill I have for you. Get the hell out of here, and don't come back until you've thought things through." With that, she gently helped Ethan back into the office, slamming the door shut with a loud bang and locking it from the inside. Leo stood there for a moment, a humorless smile playing on his lips. Come back when he'd thought things through? He had, of course. Whatever affection he'd had for Isabel Vance was now completely gone. Leo sighed, looking at the file in his hand. He figured he'd have to go back to his office and try again later. To his surprise, however, he ran into Ethan again in the break room not long after. Ethan had changed into a new, equally expensive suit, the latest from Zegna. He greeted Leo as if nothing had happened. "Director Hayes, you don't have an assistant? Making your own coffee?" Leo grunted in acknowledgement, turning the question back on him. "Are you an assistant, Mr. Chen? You seem to be making an awful lot of coffee." "You?" Ethan was stunned, at a loss for words. By the time he'd thought of a comeback, Leo cut him off flatly. "Mr. Chun, you can drop the act with me. There's no need to target me. I'm not your rival." Isabel must have told him about the divorce immediately. Ethan froze, then a smirk spread across his face. "I don't see you as a rival either. A guy like you, with no family background, an orphan whose parents died young. It's a miracle you haven't starved to death. We're not from the same world. Take the clothes I'm wearing. She knows exactly what to order for me without me even asking. We're talking limited edition pieces that cost thousands of dollars. The stuff you wear, to her, it's no different from trash." Ethan crossed his arms, his contempt unconcealed. "The clothes are, and so is the man. You were just a novelty. You mean nothing to her. Leo didn't care about luxury brands, and the words didn't faze him. But he wasn't about to stand there and take the abuse. He looked at Ethan and, after a moment, said, "So, you were just a novelty to Ava Lynn, too? No wonder you can relate to my situation so well, Mr. Chun." "You!" Ethan's face flushed red, then pale, but he couldn't come up with a retort. "I'm nothing like you," he finally muttered before grabbing his coffee and storming off. Leo suspected this would only make Ethan resent him more. He felt a pang of regret. There was no point in getting into a war of words. Leo had once been a wealthy young man himself, but when he was 15, his family fell apart. Both of his parents committed suicide, leaving him alone and adrift in the world. That's when Ava Lynn appeared. If Ava hadn't been there to support him, he might not have survived. So later, when Ava came to him for a favor, he didn't refuse. "There's this guy, Ethan Chun, who won't leave me alone, and it's getting on my nerves. But he's not just after me, he's playing games, keeping Isabel Vance on the hook at the same time. I need you to go win Isabel over. Marry her. Once Ethan knows he has no chance, you can walk away. I'll give you anything you want." Ava had been his savior. Even without the promise of a reward, he would have done it just to get some peace. He never expected that chasing Isabel would turn into a 7-year endeavor. First, she couldn't stand him. But Leo was relentless, thoughtful in every detail. He didn't win over Isabel, but he did manage to win over himself. Leo realized he had truly fallen in love with her. Finally, on the day Ethan left the country, a drunk Isabel cornered him in a private room, her breath hot and invasive. "Leo Hayes, you like me so much? Then stay by my side forever." They slept together for the first time that night. Ava had warned him, "Leo, be careful not to get burned." But Leo was confident, promising he could make Isabel forget Ethan. And so, the bet between him and Ava was made. Now, it was clear he hadn't just lost, he'd lost completely. He accepted it. Leo didn't know when Ethan left the office. At 3 p.m., just as he was about to start a department meeting, Isabel stormed into his office. "Leo, I told you I would compensate you. Why do you keep provoking Ethan?" Leo knew instantly that the spoiled brat had gone crying to her again. "What did he tell you?" Isabel froze. "What?" I said, "What did Mr. Chun tell you?" Leo was busy preparing for his meeting and wasn't in the mood to argue. "Whatever he said, it's my fault. Apologize to him for me, and please ask him to stay away from me in the future." Isabel had never seen this side of Leo before. She assumed he was still angry about the divorce and was just acting out. She reached out and grabbed his arm as he tried to leave, her gaze complex. "Leo, I know I've wronged you, but can you please not be like this?" Leo figured it was time to clear the air, so he let her hold on. "Like what? You?" Isabel's brow furrowed. It took her a long moment to finally say, "The divorce proceedings have already started. It's too late even if you don't agree. Stop doing these pointless things." Leo wanted to tell her that he did agree, that it wasn't too late, and that right now he wished time would speed up so he could get away from all this drama. But Isabel didn't give him the chance. After delivering her threat, she rushed off to console her precious darling. Leo was happy for the peace and quiet, pouring all his energy into his work. For the next several days, he left early and came home late, sleeping in the guest room. He didn't see Isabel, nor did he care whether she came home or not. Once he had finally wrapped up all his work, Leo submitted his resignation to HR. Mr. Clark in HR looked troubled. "Director Hayes, don't you need Ms. Vance to sign off on this?" Signatures again. Leo thought about the last document, which Isabel's assistant, Chloe, had eventually taken to her. But this was a resignation letter. Surely Isabel would sign it without any fuss? After some thought, Leo decided to use the same method. When he handed the letter to Chloe, she couldn't hide her surprise. Even though Ms. Vance had Mr. Chun by her side now, Director Hayes was still her legal husband. "Are you really resigning?" Chloe's expression was a mix of sympathy for Leo and regret for losing a colleague. "If you leave, it's like Ms. Vance is losing her right-hand man." Leo shook his head. "Ms. Vance already knows I'm leaving. Just give it to her. She'll sign it. Once they were divorced, he would have no reason to stay here. Since Leo had said so, Chloe had no choice but to take the letter to Isabel. Isabel was on the phone with Ethan, discussing where to have dinner that night. She glanced at Chloe and gestured for her to bring the document over. Chloe handed it to her and watched as her boss signed her name without a moment's hesitation. Isabel was still speaking gently into the phone. Out with the old, in with the new. If it's not a good fit, you can't force it. It seemed Ms. Vance had really made up her mind, Chloe thought. She didn't ask any more questions, simply taking the signed paper and leaving the office. Leo immediately took his resignation to HR and completed all the handover procedures. Walking out of the building with a box in his arms, he took several deep breaths. He felt like he was finally on the verge of freedom, ready to say goodbye to his pathetic old life for good. Isabel, however, was oblivious to all of this. She just felt that the office was eerily quiet. The man who used to pop in from time to time with snacks and drinks had been absent for days. Leo had practically been her personal nutritionist, brewing herbal teas and making fruit salads during his breaks. Isabel had a sensitive stomach, and he would sometimes even bake soft bread for her in the break room. That afternoon, Isabel had hot pot with Ethan, and her stomach was burning. She suddenly craved the sweet white fungus soup Leo used to make. She called Chloe on the intercom. "Where's my husband?" Chloe paused. Her husband? Hadn't he already left this morning? Before she could answer, Isabel massaged her temples and said, "Never mind. Just go tell him that I'll have dinner with him tonight." She had brought up the divorce, so Leo was probably in a bad mood. He was usually calm, but he wasn't immune to sulking. Isabel figured she had been spending a lot of time with Ethan lately. Since she'd promised to spend this last month on good terms, she should probably soothe Leo's feelings. Seeing that Isabel had genuinely forgotten, Chloe finally spoke up. "Ms. Vance, Director Hayes has already completed his handover and officially resigned." Isabel's head snapped up. "What did you say?" The coldness in her eyes made Chloe's heart clench. She forced herself to continue. "I gave you his resignation letter to sign yesterday. Director Hayes said you knew." Her voice grew quieter as Isabel stopped listening. She didn't know where the anger came from, but she grabbed her coat from the back of her chair and stormed out of the office. She sped home, screeching to a halt in the driveway. Isabel closed her eyes, trying to suppress her frustration. Whenever Leo was upset with her before, he would usually just tell her what was wrong, and then everything would go back to normal whether she cared or not. This time, he'd really outdone himself. He actually quit. Was he so sure she would come running to him? Isabel's eyes darkened as she got out of the car and pushed open the front door. The moment she stepped inside, the scene before her made her forget everything else. A rush of blood went to her head, and she blurted out, "What are you doing?" Leo hadn't expected her to be back at this hour. He glanced up at her, then handed the booklet in his hand to the bewildered housekeeper beside him. "You can keep sorting. I just need to have a word with Ms. Vance." Isabel frowned at the items scattered all over the floor. They were all gifts she had given Leo over the years when she was in a good mood. There were also some matching sets he had insisted on buying when they went out together. Back then, she didn't know Ethan would come back, so Isabel often just went along with it. Matching laptops, shoes, hats, luggage. Like any ordinary young couple, Leo loved all that cutesy stuff. But after he bought them, Isabel never once used them. She was used to her old things. Her old laptop was years old, a high school graduation gift from Ethan. But not using them didn't mean she wanted to throw them away. Isabel stared at the items on the floor, memories flooding back. "Leo," she said coldly, "I think you owe me an explanation." "An explanation for what?" "I'm just donating some things I don't use. It's nothing." Leo paused, his tone tinged with sarcasm. "You never even glanced at this stuff before. Don't tell me now, Ms. Vance, that you can't bear to part with any of it. You scorned it then, so why pretend to care now?" Leo suddenly remembered the notebook Isabel always used. She had kept it in perfect condition for 10 years because it was a gift from Ethan. The difference between being loved and not being loved was so obvious. Isabel was speechless, a lump of anger stuck in her chest. After a long moment, her cold voice returned. Then what's this about you resigning? We had an agreement, Leo. So Ethan said a few things, so what? He's not even mad at you. Do you really need to make such a scene over something so small? She still thought he was making a scene. Leo found it both hopeless and a little funny. He looked Isabel straight in the eye and said, enunciating each word, "This has nothing to do with Ethan. It's because we're getting a divorce. I don't care what you do with him, and I don't want any ties to you. Isabel Vance, I'm giving you what you want. I won't love you anymore." It was rare to see such a blank expression on Isabel's face. Perhaps because she had never heard Leo say he didn't love her before. She couldn't seem to process it. The muscle in her jaw twitched. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. After a while, her expression finally soured. "Leo, there's no need to say such pointless things. Ethan won't bother you. I told you I would stay with you for this month to give you time to move on. Why are you lying to yourself?" She still didn't believe him. Leo actually laughed. "How about this? I'll move out. Once I'm done packing, you can even have Ethan move in. I don't care." Isabel stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine if he was telling the truth. After a while, her breath hitched, and an unconcealable darkness crept into her eyes. A darkness even she didn't notice. "That won't be necessary. Ethan doesn't want to get involved in our business. You don't need to keep testing me with words like that. I've made up my mind, and I'm not changing it. There will only ever be one person in my heart, and that's Ethan. Instead of doing all these useless things, you should think about what else you want. On a financial level, I can do my best to compensate you." Leo looked at her dark expression and found himself at a loss for words. Just how much had he loved her before to make her believe he would never, ever leave her? Isabel didn't wait for him to say more. As soon as she finished, she turned and left. Probably to find Ethan again, Leo thought. But it didn't matter. In fact, what Isabel had just said was a good reminder. Since she was being so generous, it would be rude not to take something. Who would ever say no to more money? That afternoon, Leo selected 2 villas from Isabel's extensive property portfolio, worth millions of dollars. He then had a lawyer draw up the transfer documents and pass them to Chloe for Isabel to sign. Isabel signed and stamped them without hesitation. Capping her pen, she looked up at Chloe. "Did he say anything else?" Chloe paused. "No, I suppose he's run out of options." Isabel let out a contemptuous laugh. "He probably read some toxic advice online. Something about how a woman's heart is where her money is. Whatever. He's in a bad mood. Let him do what he wants. If he asks for anything else, just give it to him." Although this time Leo really had gone a bit too far. She'd have to give him the cold shoulder for a while longer. Otherwise, with more than 20 days left, who knew what other stunts he might pull? Chloe looked at her boss's expression, wanting to say something but holding back. She wanted to say that her husband didn't look like he was in a bad mood at all. On the contrary, he was glowing. But then again, it was a matter between a husband and wife. It wasn't her place to say too much. Chloe respectfully agreed and took the signed documents back to Leo. Leo immediately listed the 2 villas with a real estate agent, instructing them to sell as quickly as possible. The price wasn't important, but he wanted a full cash payment and a fast closing. Those 2 villas would sell for at least $10 million easy. That evening, Leo received a text from Isabel. She said she wouldn't be back for a few days and that he should take the time to calm down and not get hung up on things. Part amicably and they could still be friends. Leo stared at the message for 2 seconds and chuckled. He'd never realized just how narcissistic she was. Out of sight, out of mind. He archived the conversation and went back to packing. He had lived in this house for 5 years, and there was too much clutter. Leo sorted the important things into boxes, planning to throw everything else away. If he was going to make a clean break, he would make it clean. He didn't want to leave a single trace behind. Isabel was gone for 2 days. Leo was calmer than he had imagined. The feelings he thought would be so hard to let go of weren't so difficult after all. That morning, just after he'd torn a page off his desk calendar, he got a call from Chloe. Chloe couldn't reach Isabel, but there was a very important contract that needed to be signed at the office. The other party was pushing, and she had no other choice but to call Leo. Leo paused. What about Ethan? Have you asked him? I did. Mr. Chun doesn't know where she is either. Leo thought for a moment, then decided to go. Even though his feelings for Isabel were gone, he had still poured his heart into the company. Besides, he had been in charge of the project Chloe was talking about. Leo left the house and drove to the office. The Vance Corp building was located at a large intersection with heavy traffic. He checked his rearview mirror and turned on his left blinker. Just as he'd turned the steering wheel, a sedan suddenly sped toward him from the side, crashing head-on into his car. The force of the impact deployed the airbag. Leo felt like a kite with a snapped string. His head swam as he watched helplessly while his car spun out of control, finally slamming into the median strip. The other car was also badly damaged, thick smoke billowing from it and obscuring his view of the person inside. Leo managed to shake his head, feeling something wet on his face. He raised a hand and wiped it away. It was blood. Before he could react, a familiar figure appeared in his line of sight. The fear in his heart seemed to subside a little, and he desperately tried to push the door open. But just as his hand touched the handle, he saw the woman run straight to the other car, her face a mask of panic and anxiety he had never seen before. Ethan, Ethan. She wrenched the door open and carefully, tenderly, helped the man inside out of the car. So it was Ethan. Leo's hand slipped from the door handle. His chest heaved with panic, so much so that he forgot the pain. His vision was filled with her frantic face.
Ethan, I'm sorry.
It's all my fault. I shouldn't have gone drinking without telling you. It's all my fault. Don't fall asleep. I'm taking you to the hospital now. The car. Where's the car? Chloe ran up from behind, her voice urgent. Ms. Vance, we have to wait for the police to assess the accident. Assess what? I told you to get the car. Isabel roared, her icy gaze flicking in Leo's direction. He dared to hit Ethan. I don't care who it is. I'll make them pay. Through the haze of smoke, Leo saw the violence and murderous intent in her eyes as clear as day. He had thought Isabel just didn't love him, but that she had at least liked him once. Turned out, there were no feelings at all. When Ethan was involved, she couldn't care less if he lived or died. A self-deprecating smile touched Leo's lips. The gash on his forehead finally registered, and a sharp pain shot through him, spreading down his nerves to his heart until he could barely breathe. After a moment, the people across the way were gone. Just then, his phone rang. Leo struggled to pick it up and answer. Eva. His voice was hoarse and trembling uncontrollably, laced with a hint of desperation. I was in a car accident. Can you call an ambulance for me? Ava paused, then waved a hand at her assistant and put the call on speaker. Don't worry, she said. Tell me where you are. I'll send someone to get you right away. Leo forced himself to stay conscious, relaying his location and condition. The assistant listened and immediately made the arrangements. Ava's brow furrowed. So, she said, have you finally given up on her? Leo leaned weakly against the seat back. His shifting gaze took in the wreckage around him, the crowd of onlookers taking pictures with their phones. He managed a soft, yeah. Can you get me out of here? As fast as possible? The woman on the other end considered this for a moment. Yes, she said, her voice firm. This is our chance. I'll make it look like you died in this crash. You'll disappear from Isabel Vance's world for good. Isabel rushed Ethan to the hospital, personally attending to him through every test and examination. Still worried, she called in the hospital's top specialists, repeatedly insisting that nothing could be allowed to happen to Ethan. After handling the admission paperwork, Chloe received a call from the police department. Her expression flickered. She answered briefly, then hurried back to the hospital room. Ms. Vance, about your husband. Why are you bringing him up now? Isabel's brow was deeply furrowed, cutting her off completely. I'll be here at the hospital with Ethan for the next few days. Keep an eye on things at the office, and don't contact me unless it's an absolute emergency. As for Leo, hadn't he already taken 2 villas to appease his anger? Besides, Ethan was in an accident. If Leo couldn't understand that, he was just being unreasonable. With that thought, Isabel's voice hardened. Put his matters aside for now. Nothing is more important than Ethan. With things said so bluntly, Chloe had no choice but to swallow her words. It seemed Ms. Vance really didn't care about her husband at all. But, never mind. He had always been kind to her. She would handle it herself. Isabel stayed at the hospital for 3 days. She had intended to ask Leo to bring her a change of clothes, but remembering they hadn't spoken in days, she decided to go home herself. When she walked in, the housekeeper was busy in the living room. For some reason, Isabel felt an unnerving emptiness in the house. She frowned, her gaze sweeping upstairs. "Where's my husband?" The housekeeper was taken aback. "Your husband? I don't know, ma'am. I've been here the past 2 days, and no one's been home." "He hadn't been back?" Isabel's face grew cold. She figured Leo must have found out she was at the hospital with Ethan and was throwing another tantrum. He really didn't understand the situation. They were getting divorced, they were going to separate sooner or later. Her offer to stay with him for a month was just a courtesy, a nod to their years of marriage. Did he really think she would change her mind? Isabel took out her phone and dialed Leo's number. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed has been turned off." Ha! He'd even turned off his phone. An indescribable frustration welled up inside her. Isabel loosened her collar and stalked upstairs. The second-floor hallway had once been filled with plants Leo had collected over time, rare orchids, succulents, even difficult-to-grow lilies of the valley. But now all the shelves were empty. Not a single leaf remained. A vein throbbed in Isabel's temple. A terrible premonition grew stronger. She strode forward and kicked open the bedroom door. The curtains were open, and bright sunlight flooded the room. A breeze rustled through, making the space feel even more vast, silent, and desolate. Everything was gone. The desk was bare, cleared of its books and trinkets. The watches and cufflinks in the dresser had vanished. After a long moment, Isabel managed to force a breath from her tight chest, but it did nothing to dispel the fire in her eyes. She clenched her fists, scanning every corner of the room. The closet was empty. In the bathroom, only a single toothbrush remained. Even the cabinet where he kept his things had been wiped clean. Isabel wondered if she was dreaming. A dream where everything related to Leo had simply disappeared. She squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them again, nothing had changed. That man, he just left, without a word. Where did he go? How dare he? A surge of rage burned through Isabel, threatening to consume her reason.
Impossible.
Leo seemed aloof, but he was crazy about her. Just a few days ago, he was trying everything he could think of to win her back. How could he just vanish without a trace? He had to be playing some kind of game, waiting for her to come looking for him. Weren't those 2 villas proof enough? Isabel calmed herself slightly and went back downstairs. "Are you sure you haven't seen him at all?" Her aggressive demeanor startled the housekeeper. Seeing her bloodshot eyes, she stammered, "And no. A few days ago, some people came to pick up some things. They said something about collecting his final belongings." She hadn't heard clearly at the time, but they had the code to the house, so she assumed he had sent them and didn't ask questions. Isabel sneered. "Final belongings? Well, Leo, your games are getting more and more elaborate." She ground her teeth, pulling out her phone to call Chloe. "Get over here," she roared. "Now." 20 minutes later, a frantic Chloe appeared in the driveway. "Ms. Vance, where is Leo Hayes?" Isabel's gaze was heavy, her voice as cold as ice. "I remember you telling me at the hospital that he contacted you." Chloe hadn't expected to be summoned so urgently over Leo. She froze for a second. "It wasn't him who contacted me." "Then who was it?" Isabel's sharp gaze locked onto Chloe. "Don't think I don't know you two are close. What are you trying to cover for him?" No wonder Chloe had been so hard to find lately. Leo must have called her away. "Chloe, don't forget who you work for. Tell me where he went and what he asked you to hide. If you can't, you can pack your things and get out." Chloe was even more confused now. Hadn't Ms. Vance herself said not to bother her with anything related to her husband? After a moment's thought, Chloe realized that Isabel still didn't know he was dead. Her expression grew complicated. "Ms. Vance," she began, her voice strained, It was the police who called me that day. The car that collided with Mr. Chen's, it was driven by your husband. He died at the scene. Isabel's head snapped up. What did you say? The darkness in her eyes was so thick it made Chloe's stomach clench. 3 days ago, the paperwork for the Crestview project needed to be signed urgently, but I couldn't reach you, so I had to call your husband. I didn't expect him to show up at the same time as Mr. Chun, and for them to get into an accident right at the entrance. There was so much smoke. I didn't see the license plate, and she hadn't noticed that. As they were frantically taking Ethan to the hospital, Leo was just a short distance away, watching them. Chloe had been blaming herself for days, the first time a personal matter had ever affected her work. Isabel was silent, her face a mask of ice. No.
Impossible.
That couldn't have been Leo. Wasn't that man throwing a tantrum at her? Why would he come to the company? Isabel's aura was terrifying. Chloe tentatively called her name. Ms. Vance, his funeral is already over. The report says he passed away half an hour after the accident. Before she could finish, the silent woman lunged forward, grabbing her by the collar, her voice chillingly cold. I told you to stop talking.
Impossible.
Leo Hayes can't be dead. Isabel abruptly shoved her away and staggered outside. Watching her bosses retreating back, Chloe felt as though she understood something. But it was too late. She sighed deeply, murmuring to herself, Ms. Vance, if you knew it would be like this, why did you do it? His body has already been cremated. You'll never find him now. Isabel didn't believe Leo was dead, but she didn't know where to look for him. She drove aimlessly for a long time. A red light ahead. She hit the brakes. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her palms ached. Leo, where are you? She knew Leo was an orphan, that he'd worked his way through school from a young age. He had no family. Without her, he had nowhere to go. Isabel took a deep breath as her phone buzzed repeatedly beside her. Chloe had sent several messages and photos. Leo's death certificate and cremation record. Ms. Vance, if you don't believe me, you can go to the police station and check the surveillance footage. They have the full video of the accident scene, as well as his autopsy report. He's really gone. My condolences. Isabel's breathing grew heavy. She threw the phone onto the passenger seat, slammed on the gas, and sped to the police station. Everything was just as Chloe had said. The accident video, the death certificate, the cremation documents. No mistakes. But Isabel still refused to believe it. This was Leo. He had loved her for 5 whole years. Just a few days ago, he was trying everything to get back together with her. How could he just be dead? How could he? A huge wave of panic washed over Isabel. It felt as if a giant hole had been ripped open inside her, a bottomless pit of emptiness. As she sat numbly in her empty living room, the hospital called. Ms. Vance? Mr. Chun is complaining of a severe headache. The painkillers aren't working. Could you come to the hospital? Isabel's eyes flickered. Only then did she remember Ethan. She pulled herself together and drove back to the hospital. Ethan's face was pale. When he saw her appear in the doorway, he looked even weaker. Isabel, why the sudden headache? Isabel went and sat on the edge of the bed. Ethan immediately shifted closer, leaning against her. It's probably a side effect. We'll know more when the test results come back. Weren't you going home to get a change of clothes? Where are they? The woman froze, only now remembering the question. Isabel's dark eyes shifted slightly. I heard you weren't feeling well, so I rushed back. I forgot. Ethan buried his face against her, sniffing like a kitten. You haven't showered all day. You smell? Isabel. Before, Isabel would have been charmed by his dependent tone. But today, for some reason, she just felt irritated. She pushed him away. If you don't feel well, you should get some sleep. Okay? She said, her patience wearing thin. Ethan's expression stiffened for a moment before he wrapped his arms around her again. Are you leaving? He pouted. Before Isabel could answer, there was a knock on the door. A man in a suit walked in, his tone all business. Good afternoon, Ms. Vance. I was Mr. Hayes's attorney. I'm handling the divorce proceedings on his behalf, as well as the settlement of his estate. The lawyer produced a stack of documents and placed them in front of Isabel. Ms. Vance, this is the property Mr. Hayes left behind. Isabel's eyes burned as she stared at the stack of A4 paper, saying nothing. It was Ethan who reacted, his eyes wide with shock. Left behind? Leo, The lawyer glanced at him, then explained. Mr. Hayes passed away in a car accident 3 days ago. As his legal representative, I have been given full authority to handle the distribution of his assets. The majority of Mr. Hayes's assets have been donated to charitable foundations. The remainder here is to be returned to you, Ms. Vance. Additionally, given the fact of Mr. Hayes's passing, the waiting period for your divorce is concluded, and the marriage is naturally terminated. You are now a single woman. After saying his piece, the lawyer gave a polite nod. If you have no further questions, I'll be on my way. Isabel remained silent, like a soulless doll. Isabel. Ethan bit his lip, his voice soft and comforting. Since it's already happened, try not to be too sad. Leo, he wouldn't want to see you like this. The woman didn't move. Her hands, hanging at her sides, had unknowingly clenched into fists, her knuckles white. Ethan looked at her profile, then thought back to what the lawyer had said. So, she had already divorced that man? Then why hadn't she told him? Was it because she was still holding on to some hope that they might get back together? Ethan watched her, a mix of emotions churning inside him, along with a strange sense of satisfaction. What good was hope? What good was regret? Leo Hayes was dead. He had died in that car crash 3 days ago. A fleeting smile touched Ethan's lips. He assumed Isabel's despair was temporary, that she just hadn't processed the fact that Leo was gone. They may have been married for 5 years, but Ethan had more faith in Isabel's feelings for him. However, the reality of the situation nearly made Ethan grind his teeth to dust. Although Isabel stayed at the hospital with him, she grew quiet and withdrawn. She would often stare off into space for long periods of time. She stopped wearing makeup and looked haggard. The glamorous, confident woman he knew was gone. Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He forced a smile. Isabel, I'm getting out of the hospital tomorrow. Why don't you get dressed up, and we can go out for a nice meal? I'm so sick of hospital food. I could puke. His last sentence had a pleading tone, but Isabel was unmoved. Her gaze shifted slightly. Get dressed up how? You know. Ethan's smile faltered. Put on some makeup, change your clothes, do your hair. He reached out and stroked her cheek, trying to keep his tone light. Look at you. You've been taking care of me for a few days and you look like you're homeless. Can you bring back the beautiful, elegant Isabel for me? Isabel pulled his hand away, the words tumbling out as if by instinct. Leo used to pick out all my clothes. He had a great sense of style, and he loved Terra de Hermes. Smells so good. For the past 5 years, Isabel had grown accustomed to Leo's care, from her daily meals to major company projects. That man had seeped into her life like air, present in every corner. And yet, that very person was dead. He hadn't left her with a single word before he died. Ethan's face paled, and he stared at her in disbelief. What are you trying to say? Leo's gone. No matter how much you talk about him, he can't hear you. Do you understand? He grabbed her arms, his grip tight, as if trying to shake her back to reality. You need to live in the present, Isabel. The person by your side is me. So what if Leo's dead? I'm still here. What are you going to do? Break up with me? Go die with him? Seeing him grow more and more agitated, Isabel's eyes remained devoid of emotion. She gave a self-deprecating laugh. Ethan, I'm not thinking about anything. I just need some time to sort through my feelings. That day, if I had just walked over and taken one look, I would have seen how badly he was hurt. I could have bought him some time. He wouldn't have died. We both owe him. With that, Isabel pulled away from Ethan. The movement was gentle, almost tender, but her words were cruel. Ethan, I'll have someone pick you up from the hospital tomorrow. You're fine now. There's work waiting for me at the office. Get some rest. Isabel. Ethan tried to grab her, but only brushed the hem of her clothes. An uncontrollable panic seized him. Isabel, please don't go, okay? The woman didn't look back, striding out of the room on her long legs. According to Ethan's plan, now that Leo was dead, Isabel should have taken him back to the Bayshore estate, planned an elaborate proposal, and then bought the ring, the couture gown, and planned the wedding. But not only had she not done that, she was drowning in guilt over Leo, unable to escape. He hadn't seen her since that day. Ethan waited a week, growing more and more restless, until he finally went to Vance Corp to corner her. For 3 days straight, he didn't even catch a glimpse of her. "Where in the world is your CEO? I'm her boyfriend. Let me in." The receptionist didn't recognize him and found his claim amusing. Are men really this desperate nowadays? If you were really Ms. Vance's boyfriend, you wouldn't need me to call her for you. "Sir, if you don't have an appointment, please leave. Don't disturb our work, or I'll have to call security, and that won't be pleasant." Ethan was about to argue when he spotted Chloe coming out from inside. He rushed over. "Chloe, where is Isabel?" The sudden appearance of someone startled Chloe. "Mr. Chin." She greeted him, then sighed. "Ms. Vance isn't in the office." Ethan hadn't been sleeping well for days. His skin was in bad shape and his eyes were bloodshot. He was out of options. Ava didn't want him, and if he couldn't hold on to Isabel now, what would he do? Ethan clung to Chloe like a drowning man, afraid she would run away. Then where is she? Chloe felt a bit sorry for him, and besides, maybe it would be good if there was someone who could talk some sense into Ms. Vance right now. "I think Ms. Vance is at her husband's grave. If you want to find her, you could try looking there." The city's largest cemetery was on the south side. For several days now, Isabel had been coming here with a bottle of liquor, sitting in silence, occasionally murmuring a few words to the man in the photograph. It was ironic. When Leo was alive, she barely gave him the time of day. Now that he was dead, she was here every day, talking to a picture and reliving the past. "Leo, don't you think I'm pathetic?" The man in the photo smiled faintly, as if agreeing with her. Isabel looked down, the self-deprecating curve of her lips turning bitter. She raised the bottle and drank deeply. Suddenly, a hand shot out and snatched the whiskey bottle from her. "If you really want to die, then go do it," a harsh voice scolded. "At least then people would think you died for Leo. Who are you putting on this pathetic act for?" Isabel looked up to see her friend, Alex. She scoffed, reaching for the bottle. "You got a lot of free time today? What are you doing here? Trying to manage my life. If I didn't come, you'd probably drink yourself to death here, wouldn't you?" Alex kicked her lightly, glancing at the bottle she had snatched back. "Do you have any idea how strong that is? If you keep drinking like that, how many lives do you think you have?" He had been on a business trip in Europe for a month and had only just heard about Isabel and Leo when he got back. A perfectly good couple, torn apart by some guy who just popped up out of nowhere. It was unbelievable. Alex had wanted to slap some sense into Isabel, but seeing her in this state, he found he couldn't bring himself to do it. Isabel's eyes were already hazy. The alcohol temporarily numbed her pain. Most importantly, "Alex." She stared at the bottle, her voice hoarse. "You know, every time I drink, I can see him." Alex was silent. "He says he doesn't blame me, that he wants me to live a good life." Alex sneered. "You're really something." Isabel took another swig. "I know I wronged him," she said softly. "I took his love for granted. I'm even responsible for his death. So this is how you atone." Alex looked down at her, grinding his teeth. "If I were Leo, and I saw you like this, I just want you to get the hell away from me. Stop disrespecting his memory." The woman froze, the pain in her eyes spreading. "Is that right? What else would it be?" Alex grabbed her by the collar and hauled her to her feet. "Do you think this is you repenting? It's not. You're just trying to make yourself feel better. Stop pinning everything on Leo. He never asked you to do anything. This is all on you. You're only doing this for yourself." Isabel let him hold her, her body limp like an empty shell. She turned her head to look at the man in the photo, so familiar yet so strange. In that moment, she suddenly realized she had never really known him at all. Alex shoved her away, his own emotions in turmoil. He and Isabel had been friends since they were kids, so of course he knew all about Leo. When Leo was pursuing Isabel, everyone knew about it. After they got together, Alex had even teased her. It's not every day you find a man who's so genuine. Settle down. You two will grow old together. And what happened? The second that Ethan Guy came back, she blew everything up and got Leo killed in the process. Don't you love that Ethan Guy? Then you should be off living your happy life with him. You can't have it both ways. Acting all heartless and then pretending to be heartbroken. Isabel didn't move, a shadow of despair clinging to her slumped figure. After a long moment, her hoarse voice finally emerged. I thought I didn't love him either. She thought she was just used to him being there, used to him taking care of her. As long as Leo was around, every complicated problem could be solved. But now that he was gone, she saw his shadow in every corner. She was terrified of seeing him, yet she longed to. I regret it. Isabel clutched her hair, her voice raw. Alex, I really regret it. It's all my fault. If I could trade my life for his, would he come back? It was the first time Alex had ever seen Isabel like this. The harsh words he'd been about to say died in his throat. He sighed deeply and sat down beside her. That's all useless talk. If you really cared about him at all, you'd finish what he started. Live a good life. Be a better person from now on. And another thing, I watched the security footage from outside your company building. Don't you think it's strange? Isabel's head snapped up. What do you mean? The accident was suspicious. Alex frowned slightly. He knew she was too close to the situation to see clearly, so he spelled it out for her. There's a huge intersection, 2 lanes in each direction. Leo was driving normally. Why would he just happen to crash into that specific car? Isabel's breath caught in her throat. She fell into a long, heavy silence. Not long after, Alex got a call from his office. Seeing that Isabel had calmed down, he said, "Wallowing in misery won't do any good. If Leo were alive, he'd only feel like his efforts were all for nothing. You need to think about what you're going to do next." Once Alex left, the cemetery was quiet again. Isabel turned to look at the headstone, the haze in her eyes gone. "Leo, can you show me the way?" The wind rustled through the trees, but no one answered. Less than 10 seconds later, footsteps approached from a distance. Isabel's heart suddenly began to pound, a strange sense of anticipation rising within her. After a moment, she slowly, stiffly, turned her head. Ethan clearly saw the light ignite in her eyes, and then just as quickly, extinguish. His breathing grew ragged, but he forced himself to compose his emotions as he walked over. I heard from Chloe that you might be here, so I came to see." Isabel looked away. "Didn't I tell you to get some rest?" To be honest, she wasn't sure how to face Ethan right now. Did she love him? Yes. She was certain that, for the past few years, she had been thinking of him. But after Leo died, things that had once been clear suddenly became blurry. She couldn't even tell who it was she truly loved anymore. Ethan placed the flowers he'd brought in front of the headstone. "I never really got a good look at him before," he said softly. "I just realized today, Leo was a very handsome man." "He was always handsome," Isabel said without thinking. Ethan's face paled. He awkwardly changed the subject. "Isabel, you've been here for a long time. Shouldn't you be heading back?" When she looked at him quizzically, he added with a smile, "It's cold out here. What if you catch a cold, right?" Only then did Isabel notice how thinly dressed Ethan was. She frowned. "Why are you wearing so little? You just got out of the hospital. You need to be more careful." Ethan's eyes reddened at her concern. I was worried about you too," he said plaintively. "Let's go back together, okay?" Isabel had wanted him to leave first, but looking at his gaunt face, she couldn't bring herself to say it. "Okay, let's go back together." In the car, Isabel remembered what Alex had said. "Ethan," she asked casually, "do you remember what happened during the accident?" She remembered it clearly. Ethan had lost control of the car and swerved into oncoming traffic because someone had hit him. Ethan froze, surprised by the sudden question. I was so panicked at the time, I don't remember anything." "Why?" Isabel glanced at him, amused by his startled expression. She reached out and patted his head. "Are you getting scared just thinking about it?" "It's fine, I was just asking. If you don't remember, It's okay. The police still had the surveillance footage anyway. She could get a copy and watch it later. Ethan looked at her thoughtful expression, a strange unease settling in his heart. Are you suspecting that someone hit me on purpose? It's just a suspicion. The woman's voice was low. Alex reminded me just now. That road is very wide, and there have never been any accidents there before. But that day, several cars were involved in a pile-up. Leo was gone, and Ethan was seriously injured. But no one else was hurt. Thinking about it now, it was worth looking into. Oh, Ethan said. The sunlight glinted in his eyes, making them hard to read. I doubt it. Who would go to all that trouble for nothing? Isabel just smiled and didn't answer. She didn't want to burden him with conspiracy theories. Ethan had always been so innocent, it was better for him to stay that way. No one spoke for the rest of the drive. Isabel dropped Ethan off at his place. You go get some rest. Call me if you need anything. Just focus on getting better, okay? Ethan nodded. Where are you going? I'm going to the police station. Isabel unbuckled her seatbelt, got out, and walked around to the passenger side to open his door. Be good, Ethan. Once I get this sorted out, we can be together properly. Ethan got out of the car, his hair falling over his face and hiding his expression. Drive safe, he said quietly. Get some sleep. Good night. Ethan stood on the sidewalk, watching the two red taillights disappear into the distance. His fingers gripped the strap of his bag so tightly he didn't even notice. Get this sorted out and then be together properly? But if you really sorted it out, we probably could never be together again. Isabel went over all the video evidence she could find, including the security cameras from her office building and the cameras from the businesses across the street. The problem was that the van that hit Ethan had stolen plates. The driver had fled the scene as soon as the accident happened and had yet to be found. After listening to her concerns, the police officer's expression grew serious. Don't worry, Ms. Vance. We'll transfer the case to the Criminal Investigation Department immediately and have them look into it as soon as possible. Okay. Thank you for your hard work. Isabel dragged her exhausted body home. The sky had already grown dark. The dimly lit house was silent, eerily so. Only then did she realize, ever since she'd brought up the divorce, Leo had been systematically erasing himself from her life. At home, at the office, there was no longer any trace of him. Isabel stood in the middle of the living room like a soulless puppet. Finally, in the strange, suffocating silence, she covered her face and fell apart. Days turned into weeks, and soon half a year had passed. The person responsible for the car accident was eventually caught. He was just the owner of a junkyard who had panicked and fled because he was driving a car with stolen plates. There was a resolution, but it wasn't the one Isabel wanted. Ethan comforted her. Isn't this a good thing? Were you hoping to find something? The accident was just an accident. The driver has paid the price. Isabel, let's look forward together. Okay? For the past 6 months, Isabel had still shown concern for him, occasionally having dinner with him, but she never defined their relationship. Ethan was going crazy. If he had known this would be the outcome, what was the point of everything he'd done since coming back? Isabel pinched the bridge of her nose. Ethan, you should go home, she said tiredly. I want to be alone. Ethan had no choice but to leave dejectedly. But he had already made up his mind. There was an important gala in 2 days. Isabel had said she would take him. He was going to make her acknowledge him as her fiancé in front of everyone. The gala was hosted by the Morrison family, and the guest list was a who's who of the city's elite. Ethan dressed to the nines and waited for Isabel to pick him up. At 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. He excitedly went to open it, only to find Chloe standing there. Ethan's face fell. Where's your boss? Mr. Chun. Ms. Vance had to go ahead to discuss a project with Mr. Morrison. She sent me to pick you up. Oh, I see. Ethan smiled. Then let's go. He appeared understanding, but inside he was furious. What was so important that she had to go ahead? Couldn't she have taken a detour to pick him up? Isabel, have you really changed? While Ethan was lost in thought, Isabel had already arrived at the venue. Vance Corp and Morrison Industries had a major collaboration in the works, and she had come early to discuss the details with Andrew Morrison. A waiter led her to a second-floor lounge. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Morrison is inside." Isabel nodded and knocked before entering. Andrew Morrison greeted her warmly. "There you are. I was just about to call you. Sorry, there was some traffic." "I'm just kidding."
Seat. Seat.
They were both straightforward people. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, they got down to business, going over potential issues with the project. Andrew smiled. "I never have any worries when I'm working with you, Isabel. But this time, I've invited a friend to join us. I hope you don't mind." "Of course not," Isabel replied. "I have no objections to a friend of yours, Andrew." "I knew it." Andrew clapped his hands, clearly pleased. "Don't worry. She's a leader in the industry overseas. It took a lot of convincing to get her to come back and get involved in this. I'll introduce you two later." "Great. I look forward to it." With the important matters settled, Isabel glanced at her watch. "It's about time. Andrew, I'm gonna head downstairs. I'll see you later." Leaving the lounge, she took out her phone to call Ethan. Her gaze casually swept past a corner up ahead. Isabel's eyes widened in disbelief. For the past 6 months, she had dreamed of that man every night. So even if it was just a fleeting glimpse, she would recognize him. In the time it took for her to register what she'd seen, the man had disappeared. Isabel didn't care about anything else. She took off after him. Leo! It had only been a moment, and he hadn't been far, but the man had vanished as if into thin air. Isabel stood at the end of the hallway, looking left and right, unsure of which way to go. Her breathing was ragged, her chest heaving. "Leo, I know it's you. Come out. Come out. Let's talk face to face. Leo, please come out." Her voice echoed down the long, empty corridor, but no one answered. A staff member from downstairs heard the commotion and rushed up. Seeing Isabel's disheveled state, he asked with concern, "Ma'am, do you need any help?" Isabel glanced at him. "Did you see a man in a white suit? About 6'1", short black hair, very distinguished." The staff member paused. Downstairs, before he could finish, the woman in front of him was gone like the wind. He was even more confused now. "I was gonna say, there are a lot of gentlemen like that downstairs." By now, Isabel had stopped thinking. There was only one thought in her mind. Find him. Find him, no matter how long he had been hiding, no matter what his reasons were for appearing today. She would not let him get away again. The ballroom downstairs was already crowded, filled with the murmur of greetings and pleasantries. Isabel's frantic gaze scanned the room, but she couldn't find the person she was looking for. People she knew came up to greet her, but she ignored them completely. She didn't know how much time had passed. Just as she was about to give up, her eyes locked on the dessert table. A man in a white suit stood there, his short black hair impeccably styled. Although his back was to her, she somehow knew it was him. Her heart began to race. Isabel's fingertips trembled. After a moment, she finally moved, walking toward him. "Leo!" As she said his name, the man turned around. "Can I help you?" Isabel stared at the completely unfamiliar face and instinctively took a step back. How is it not him?"
Impossible.
Her look of disbelief was, in the eyes of Ava's brother, Sean, pure insanity. He rolled his eyes. "Lady, can you get your story straight before you talk to people? If you'll excuse me, my sister is waiting." Isabel was still reeling from the shock and didn't answer. Sean gave her a blatant once-over before walking away with his cake. Back in the VIP lounge, he set the plate down and flopped onto the sofa.
Seriously, sis?
That's the kind of woman Leo used to be into? She seems like she's got a few screws loose. The woman on the other sofa was looking at a file on her laptop and didn't bother to reply.
Sis.
Sean went over and snatched the laptop away. "I'm talking to you." The woman's exquisite face was almost otherworldly, her features sharp and defined. She frowned slightly. "Give me the laptop." "Not until you talk to me." Ava shot him a lazy, warning glance. Sean's bravado faltered. He reluctantly handed the laptop back, muttering, "Aren't you even a little curious? I heard Leo used to be crazy about her. She's pretty, I guess. Nice voice. But if you ask me, she's a total airhead. She can't hold a candle to you. He rattled on, and only at that last part did she deign to respond. Exactly. She's not even competition. I don't waste my time on things like that. Show off. Sean pouted and sat down beside her. Then he grinned and leaned in. But seriously, do I really look that much like Leo? I just walked by, and that Isabel woman completely lost her mind. Ava said. But you'd better not mention this to Leo. He might just knock you out. Sean and Leo were similar in height and build. With a little bit of mimicry, their silhouettes were identical. No fun, Sean sighed, propping his chin on his hand. I thought we were going to get some epic revenge on the evil ex. But no, Leo's too nice. He'd never do something like that. Ava smiled, and her already stunning face became even more breathtaking. He's not nice. Then what is he? Too lazy for revenge. Sean blinked, then pouted. You understand him so well, but you still haven't managed to win him over yet? Ava's expression froze. She grabbed a throw pillow and hurled it at him. You little brat, you just had to go there. Didn't you? Sean had finally scored a point and was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. Downstairs, Isabel had recovered and was about to go after the man to ask him some questions. Just as she took a step, her arm was grabbed by the newly arrived Ethan. Isabel, I called your name a few times. Didn't you hear me? Isabel looked at his hurt expression and felt a pang of guilt. Sorry, Ethan. I just saw someone I knew and was going to say hello. What acquaintance could possibly have captured her attention so completely? Ethan was suspicious, but he put on a sympathetic face. Well, let's go together. Mr. Lee was just asking where you were. We can see them both. Isabel frowned, but thinking about how little she had spent time with Ethan lately, she felt bad and pushed the earlier incident to the back of her mind. Okay, let's go. After a round of greetings, Ethan was beaming. The upper crust was skilled at flattery and speculating about everyone's romantic attachments. And his status was an open secret. Mr. Chun and Ms. Vance make such a handsome couple. Our wedding bells in the near future. Don't forget to send us an invitation. Comments like these were endless, and Isabel didn't deny any of them. He was secretly celebrating when their host, Andrew Morrison, appeared with a glass of wine. After making the rounds, he walked straight over to Isabel. Isabel, I've been looking all over for you. I promised I'd introduce you to a friend. Remember? Isabel smiled. I had to wait for the host to finish his duties, didn't I? Andrew laughed heartily. Come on, she's over here. No one objected, so Ethan kept his arm linked with Isabel's and went with them. He had been feeling triumphant, but when he saw the familiar figure, the smile vanished from his face. Andrew didn't notice anything amiss and continued with the introductions. This is the industry leader I was telling you about, Ava Lin. Ava is a pioneer in the AI field overseas. Her company has countless patents, and they're at the forefront of everything from drone technology to derivative development. If we didn't go way back, and if I hadn't practically begged her, she never would have come back to get involved in our little ventures. Ava raised an eyebrow, demurring, You're too kind, Andrew. It would be my honor to partner with you. Oh, stop. Andrew laughed and clapped her on the shoulder. We're all friends here. No need for formalities. Isabel was silent, her burning gaze fixed on the woman opposite her. She had never imagined that Andrew's friend would be Ava Lin. What was she doing back in the country? Could it be? Isabel's gaze shifted slightly to the man beside her. His face was pale, his expression one of utter disbelief. Ethan was gripping her arm so tightly it was as if he'd forgotten she was there. Just then, Andrew noticed the strange atmosphere. His eyes darted between them. Ava? Isabel, you two know each other? Ava looked at the pair with a wry smile. Ms. Vance and I were at the same university. We weren't close, but we know each other. As for Mr. Chun here, her smile widened. We were good friends for a time. Andrew was no fool. He understood immediately. Well, in that case, I should leave you old friends to catch up. He laughed, waving over a waiter. I need to go mingle anyway. You all chat. We can talk business later. As soon as Andrew left, a strange silence fell over the room. Ethan felt as if the air had grown thin. He couldn't take it anymore. He looked up at the woman before him. "What are you doing here?" he gritted out. Ava's expression was lazy. "If you can be here, Mr. Chun, why can't I? Aren't you in the States? Didn't you say you'd never come back? You should have just stayed there. Why are you showing your face here now?" As Ethan spoke, his eyes reddened. He remembered the past, remembered how this woman had rejected him. She said she didn't love him, and that was that. And now she was back, without a word. Did she think he would come crawling back to her? Ethan was filled with resentment, but he didn't realize how pathetic he looked in Ava's eyes. "Mr. Chun, I think you've misunderstood something. I came back purely for business. If I hadn't run into you here today, I wouldn't have even known you were in the city." Ava's lips curved. "Besides, you have someone with you. To be so eager to declare your undying love for me, isn't that a little rude?" Only then did Ethan realize he was still holding onto Isabel's arm. His face went from white to red. His heart fluttered. "Isabel," he whispered. Isabel showed little reaction. Her dark eyes were like bottomless pits, hiding her thoughts. She patted his hand reassuringly and looked up at Ava. "I never thought you'd be a friend of Andrew's, Director Lin. But this works out well. At least we won't have to waste time on introductions, right?" Ava shrugged, intrigued. "If you say so, Ms. Vance. As for the past," Isabel narrowed her eyes. "It's in the past. There's no need for you to hold it against Ethan." "Hold it against him?" Ava chuckled, giving Ethan a long, deep look. That look was like a needle pricking Ethan's heart. He panicked. What was she planning? But his fears were unfounded. Ava said nothing more and quickly changed the subject to the project. When it came to work, they both slipped into professional mode, speaking with confidence and expertise. Ethan sat to the side, watching the two most important people in his life, feeling like he was sitting on pins and needles. About 15 minutes later, when they had finished their discussion, Isabel was about to leave with Ethan when the door opened. A man in a white suit stood there, one hand in his pocket, his expression bright and handsome. "Sis, are you done yet? This party is so boring. Leo's here to get us. Can we go home now?" Only then did he notice the other two people in the room. Isabel and Ethan were also staring at him. It was him. Isabel thought of the man she'd seen from behind, and her breathing hitched. Ethan, on the other hand, breathed a sigh of relief. He had always known Ava had a spoiled younger brother with a bad temper. If he was here to get her, she would have to leave. Finally, this trial by fire could be over. Ava stepped forward, blocking Isabel's view. She wore a polite, distant smile. "Well, Ms. Vance, let's leave it at that for today. We'll be going now. We can arrange another meeting with Andrew to discuss this further." A moment after Ava and her brother left, Isabel snapped back to reality. She shook off Ethan's hand and ran after them. "Wait!" That man had said, Leo Hayes. That was the only thought in Isabel's mind. But by the time she reached the entrance, all she saw was the endless stream of traffic. Ava and her brother were gone. Isabel tilted her head back, gasping for breath. She stood by the side of the road for a long time, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. Was she going crazy? Why did she feel like he was still alive? Isabel smiled bitterly and turned to go back inside. At that exact moment, a car drove past behind her. Inside, clear as day, was Leo Hayes, a smile on his face. Leo drove while listening to Ava's brother recount the highlights of the party. "I'm telling you, those people are so boring. It's just endless sucking up, trying to make connections. The desserts were good, though. Oh man, I was going to bring you a cupcake. I forgot." The light ahead turned red. Leo hit the brakes and glanced at him. "I already had dinner," he said with a smile. "If you like it, we can go get some another time." His brother nodded eagerly. "Leo, you're the best. I saw that toad today. She's not even worthy of polishing your shoes." A silence fell over the car. He realized he'd said the wrong thing and slapped his own mouth. The smile faded from Leo's face. The light turned green, and he turned back to the road. Ava shot her brother a sharp look. Just as she was about to speak, the man in the driver's seat said calmly, "It's not about being worthy or not. Everything that happened, that was the price I paid for taking things seriously." So now he didn't love Isabel and he had no regrets. His brother quickly added, Right. Leo's the coolest." Leo chuckled. "You don't have to be so careful. I knew I'd run into Isabel sooner or later now that I'm back. It's not a big deal." Ava and her brother exchanged a look, then quickly looked away. Leo was indeed prepared to see Isabel again, but he hadn't expected it to be so soon. That weekend, after finishing all her work, Ava asked him to see a new movie. It's a Hong Kong thriller. Great reviews. "I think you'll like it." Leo had just come back from a run and was still sweaty. "Let me go shower first." "Wait for me." Ava nodded and held out her hand. Leo naturally handed her his towel, then took a step back. "What about Sean? Is he not coming?" Ava's eyes flickered. "He's out with friends." Sean had grown up overseas, he didn't have any friends here. Leo smirked but didn't call her out on it. "I'll be quick. 15 minutes. The man's tall figure disappeared around the corner. Ava looked down at the towel in her hand and smiled, a smile that could topple nations. She was never one to rush things. Letting him get used to her little by little, that seemed to be working just fine. Leo came downstairs exactly on time. The woman waiting for him had also changed clothes, and her top just so happened to match his jacket. He raised an eyebrow as he walked over. "On purpose?" he teased. "MHM." Ava had no idea what he was going to wear, but she played along. A pursuer's prerogative. Don't call out my little tricks. Leo thought to himself that with a face like Ava's, she could say the moon came out during the day, and every man alive would probably agree with her. No wonder Ethan had been so obsessed. Ava had booked tickets at the nearest theater. It was evening, and the mall was packed. She glanced at her watch. "We can get a late-night snack after the movie. Are you hungry?" she asked softly. Leo couldn't help but smile. "Ms. Lin, we just had dinner about 2 hours ago."
Ava feignait de surprise.
She leaned in closer. "Well then, my dear Mr. Hayes, would you care for a drink or a bucket of popcorn?" Leo's lips curved into a grin. "No thank you, miss. I'm trying to stay in shape." "Mr. Hayes, you're naturally handsome, a modern-day Adonis. You don't need to work out. Just support my business, please?" "All right, you." Leo couldn't keep up the act any longer and playfully tapped her arm. Ava's smiling eyes lingered on him for a moment before she slowly pulled away. With his vision clear again, Leo's smile hadn't yet faded when he looked up and saw the grim-faced woman and stunned man standing opposite them. Isabel Vance. Ethan Chin. Long time no see. Ava noticed his expression change. "What's wrong?" Following his gaze, she saw them too. She chuckled softly, casually slipping a hand into her pocket and resuming her lazy, nonchalant demeanor. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Chun. What a coincidence." Isabel ignored her, her red-rimmed eyes fixed on Leo. It was him. It was really him. He was alive. Isabel suddenly felt her heart, which had been dead for 6 months, start to beat again. Her breath caught in her throat. The next second, she strode toward Leo, grabbed his hand, and pulled him away. Ava's eyes narrowed. Before she could move, she heard the man's calm voice. "I'll talk to her. Wait for me." She lowered the hand she had been about to raise. Ethan was left standing there, his face flushing red and then pale. He didn't even know how to react. He did not want to be alone with Ava. Not now. He had seen everything the way she had been with that man. Ethan had chased Ava for so long, and she had always been so casual, so indifferent. When had she ever put in the effort to tease a man and make him happy like that? But why Leo? Anyone but him. Ethan had to admit he was consumed with jealousy. Ava saw the play of emotions on his face and smirked, crossing her arms. "Worried about Ms. Vance? Don't be. Our Leo isn't interested in her." "Your Leo?" Ethan's nails dug into his palms. "Are you and Leo together?" Ava's eyebrow twitched slightly, but she didn't answer. "You're a real piece of work, Ava Lynn." Ethan hated her for being like this, but he was powerless. He took a deep breath, forcing himself not to think about the past. If you're with Leo, why didn't you just stay in the States? What are you doing back here? Ava looked at his face. She hadn't really looked at it when they were together, but now she realized he was really not good looking. She narrowed her eyes, her voice devoid of emotion. Why, Mr. Chen? Are you afraid of us being back? Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Nothing. Ava had no desire to talk to him. We came back for a reason, and it has nothing to do with you, Mr. Chen. Ethan saw her look down at her phone, and the panic in his heart grew stronger. Ava alone was one thing, but Leo wasn't dead. He was back. What were they planning? What are you planning? In another corner, Isabel was asking Leo the same question. The empty hallway was quiet, filled only with the woman's hoarse voice. Leo looked at her red eyes, feeling nothing. It's none of your business. How is it none of my business? Leo, we're married. Isabel felt like he was a complete stranger, like she was meeting him for the first time. The feeling left her with a deep sense of powerlessness, as if all her emotions were bouncing off a wall. If you're not dead, why didn't you contact me? Do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? Leo, you were never like this before. Before, Leo would always tell her his plans. She was the one who rarely cared. You said it yourself. That was before. Leo stated the facts coldly. Isabel, we're not husband and wife anymore. Whether I'm alive or dead, or what I'm planning to do, has nothing to do with you. Isabel's lips moved, but it took her a moment to form words. No, we're not divorced, but Leo Hayes is dead. Without Leo Hayes, there was no marriage. Leo found this amusing. Didn't you dream of growing old with Ethan? Now your dream has come true. Why do you care what happens to me? Oh, right. Isabel, you don't care about me. You only care about yourself, about making yourself feel less guilty. Well, now you know I'm not dead, so you don't have to feel guilty anymore. Go do what you're supposed to do, and stop focusing on me. With that, Leo turned to leave. Isabel grabbed his hand. Leo. Leo didn't move, just glanced at her indifferently. That look made Isabel afraid. She instinctively let go, her voice low. What do you want? I can give you anything. Consider it compensation for our marriage. Isabel had already given him a lot, but he had been in such a rush to get away from her, faking his own death, that most of it had to be donated to charity. But since she had brought it up, Leo looked into her eyes. I want to find the person who tried to murder me, he said softly. Are you willing to help me with that? Isabel was stunned by the question. I suspected something back then, but after a thorough investigation, we couldn't find anything unusual, and the person responsible for the accident was sentenced. Leo, that crash was just an accident. Reopening the investigation now would be a waste of time. Leo was out of the country, but Ava had been keeping an eye on things for him. He knew Isabel had looked into the accident. That had surprised him, but it was just a surprise, nothing more. Seeing him silent, Isabel's voice grew urgent. Let the past be the past. Let's start over, okay? What she really wanted to say was, let's us start over, but looking at his unchanging expression, the words got stuck in her throat. Leo didn't know about her inner turmoil. I know the person responsible was sentenced, he said flatly. I also know he got out in 7 months for good behavior instead of the full year, which meant he was out now. Otherwise, Leo wouldn't have chosen this moment to come back. Isabel's brow furrowed. You still suspect him? Of course not. Leo chuckled but said no more. Isabel, he said, his voice cold. I may not have feelings for you anymore, but I don't hate you. I'm going to continue my investigation. It would be great if you're willing to help, but if not, that's fine too. We'll go our separate ways, and we won't owe each other anything. We won't owe each other anything. The words were like daggers, piercing Isabel's heart. She clenched her fists. I'll help you. Whatever you want to investigate, I'll help you. There was nothing more to say. Leo left the stairwell first, walking past Ethan without a glance. Let's go, he said to Ava. The movie's about to start. Ava's eyes were soft. Okay, she said. Their retreating figures were a perfect match, as if they were made for each other. Ethan watched them walk into the theater, nearly grinding his teeth to dust. They got their tickets just in time. Leo and Ava followed the crowd into the theater. Even without looking, he could feel her stealing glances at him, the questions practically written on her face. Leo sighed, amused. Just ask, Ms. Lin. What did she say to you? She said she couldn't believe I was alive and asked why I didn't contact her. What did you say to her? I said we were over, and whether I was dead or alive was none of her business. Ava was silent for a moment, then let out an almost inaudible sigh. She gently poked his cheek. Be nice. Don't throw that word around. But that's what we said, Leo said innocently. And? Leo didn't hide anything, telling her he had mentioned his plan to investigate the crash to Isabel. Ava frowned. Aren't you worried she'll tell Ethan? Whether he's involved or not, he's a huge wild card. I'm counting on her to tell him. Leo's expression was calm. If it really was Ethan, knowing we're investigating will make him antsy. He'll have to make a move, and that's when he'll slip up. They were looking for evidence, weren't they? Ava looked at his profile, mesmerizing in the dim light. This was the real Leo. He seemed to be above it all, but in reality he always paid his debts. Good or bad, he would return it twofold. Her lips curved into a smile. All right, she whispered. Since you're so smart, Mr. Hayes, I'll just handle the logistics. You go fly and I'll be your support. Her melodic voice was right next to his ear, and Leo's heart suddenly warmed. Isabel, having found out where Leo lived, started sending him gifts every day, fine wines, luxury watches, limited edition sneakers. She even had a lawyer show up, trying to transfer property deeds to him. At first, Leo politely refused, but he soon realized that the more he said no, the more she persisted. So he just let her. This, however, was a nightmare for Sean. Leo might not have a job, but he was always either working out or out of the house. That left Sean as the only one around, and he felt like he had become a full-time package receiver. One day, just as Ava got home, Sean was hauling in a case of Romani Conti. He dropped it on the floor.
Sis.
Can you please do something about this? Do you see this? That Isabel woman has no shame. She's chasing your future husband, right to your doorstep. How can you be so chill about this? Don't you care at all? He was about to lose his mind. A few days ago, all the fancy wine had been exciting. But day after day, who could stand it? Ava frowned, ignoring his theatrics. Where is he? Leo? Sean flopped onto the sofa, listless. Upstairs. He just finished working out. Probably in the shower. Ava's brow twitched. She headed upstairs. Leo's room was at the south end of the house. It wasn't the master bedroom, but it had a better view and more light. Ava knocked softly. The door was unlocked, so she pushed it open and went in. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. He was definitely showering. She stood in the middle of the room for a moment, then chose to sit down, picking up a book from the coffee table. 1 page, 2 pages. The sound of the water made her heart beat faster. Ava took a deep breath, closed the book, and put it back. Just as she was about to leave, the phone on the bed started ringing. She walked over. The name Isabel Vance glowed on the screen. Her expression darkened. Ava picked up the phone with a sneer. She answered. Leo, did you like the wine today? Are you free tonight? I found a great restaurant I want to take you to. Do you? Leo's not here. The cold voice on the other end immediately silenced her. Ava leaned casually against the bed, glancing toward the bathroom. It seems Vance Corp is doing well. You must have a lot of free time, Ms. Vance, and a lot of money to be sending Leo all these things. But our storage room is almost full, so you can stop now. Who is this? Where's Leo? Isabel demanded. Leo's in the shower. Silence on the other end. Is there anything else you'd like me to tell him, Ms. Vance? Ava asked. She hung up. Ava stared at the screen and snorted in disdain. When Leo came out, he saw her making a rather childish face. Who was that? He asked with a smile. Isabel Vance. Ava watched his face, and only when she saw no sign of anger did she continue. I told her to stop sending things. Sean is getting tired of all the deliveries. Oh, Leo said, drying his hair as if it were nothing. Ava put the phone down, got the hairdryer from the cabinet, and started drying his hair for him. You're not mad? Why would I be mad? Leo was confused. I told her to stop a long time ago, but she wouldn't listen. If you can get her to stop, that's great. Ava paused, then smiled. After his hair was dry, she got down to business. The driver from the accident is out of prison, she told him. When would be a good time for us to go see him? Leo's head snapped around. As soon as possible, of course. Tonight? Yes. Leo didn't want to wait another minute. The driver was their only lead. If they could get him to tell the truth, the real culprit would have nowhere to hide. When Leo and Ava arrived at the junkyard, it was completely dark. A faint light glowed from behind the iron gate, making the place feel eerie and desolate. They exchanged a look, and Leo went to knock. The first sound was a dog barking. They stared at the gate, waiting. After a moment, the sound of shuffling footsteps approached. A short, middle-aged man in black opened the gate. He froze when he saw the two people outside. Just as he was about to slam the gate shut, Leo shot out a hand and stopped him. Mark, I know you committed perjury. I have enough evidence to prove you attempted murder. If you don't cooperate with us today, I'll take it all to the police. You know you can't run. In this day and age, it was nearly impossible to be a fugitive. Mark grew agitated. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know you. Get out of here. Leo stared at him intently. I also know you were forced into it. I can help you. You can tell me what you want. Do you really want to live the rest of your life being blackmailed? Perhaps it was that last line that got to Mark. His expression wavered. In that instant, Leo pushed the gate open and stepped inside. Can we talk? Mark looked at the tall man before him. He didn't seem to have a choice. Leo and Ava were a perfect team, playing good cop, bad cop. With a combination of threats and promises, they soon broke Mark down. That man promised me $1 million. He said that with my background, everyone would just think it was a normal car accident. But he only gave me $500,000. I spent 7 months in jail, and when I got out, he pretended he didn't know me. He kept putting me off, like I'm an idiot. As Mark grew more and more agitated, Leo's hands trembled slightly. He opened up social media, found a picture of Ethan, and held it out. Was it him? He asked, his voice hoarse. Yes, that's him. Mark's eyes blazed with anger. But then he met Ava's cold, emotionless gaze and deflated. I told you everything I know. It's no use coming to me. Even if I hadn't done it, he would have found someone else. He was determined to hit you. Ethan hadn't necessarily wanted Leo dead. He had said that crippling him would be fine too. Ava crossed her arms, her long fingers tapping a slow rhythm. Her calm voice was heavy with pressure. I'll give you $2 million to testify against Ethan Chun. I want him in prison, but I can give you the money right now. If you're worried, we can sign a contract and have it notarized. I'm a businesswoman, and business people value integrity. Mark's mouth hung open. He was clearly wavering. Leo had calmed down now. I just want to bring the person who hurt me to justice. I won't come after you, but I hope you can help me. Mark looked at the two people in front of him and finally nodded. On the way out of the junkyard, Leo said, Ethan probably didn't plan on stiffing him. He just didn't expect Isabel to be unwilling to get engaged right after I died. So he couldn't come up with the cash. Ava shot him an appreciative look. Smart. So what now? Do we confront him directly? No need. Ava coolly pulled a recording pen from her pocket. This is all we need. The police can handle the rest. You don't have to deal with that disgusting person anymore. With the evidence, Ethan was arrested quickly. The outcome was a complete shock to Isabel. Chloe filled her in on the details. Mr. Chen's final request was to see you. The police will probably contact you for questioning. As if on cue, the office phone rang. Isabel looked dazed. She took a deep breath before answering. Hello. Ms. Vance, we need your cooperation in an investigation. Could you please come down to the station to give a statement? At 4 p.m., Isabel arrived at the city police department. After the police had questioned her thoroughly, they said, Mr. Chun has requested to see you. Would you be willing? She could refuse if she wanted to. Isabel's eyes were dark and unreadable. You can arrange it, she said. She wanted to hear what he had to say. Soon Ethan was brought in. It had only been a day, but he looked completely drained, haggard and exhausted. When he saw Isabel, he shouted, "Isabel, I'm innocent. Tell them. Tell them I didn't do anything. He was the one who wasn't paying attention while driving. Why should I take the fall for it? Besides, he's not even dead." Isabel's brow furrowed, but she listened to his tirade in silence. Ethan's emotions gradually subsided. His eyes were red, and tears streamed down his face. "Isabel, do you really not care about me at all? You're the one who destroyed what we had." The evidence was conclusive. No matter how much Ethan denied it, he was facing prison time. Isabel looked at him calmly. "Ethan, I really did love you once. And now, I'm sorry." She couldn't lie to her own heart, just as she couldn't control its beating when she saw Leo again. Love came and went without reason or logic. Ethan sneered. "So you fell in love with Leo. What good does that do? Do you think he'll take you back? I'm telling you, being with you was just a game to him. He never liked you. Not at all. You wouldn't have guessed it, but Leo and Ava made a bet. The bet was whether you could really forget about me. Isabel, do you think you're any different from me? We were just their toys." Ethan had overheard it himself, on a call between Ava and Leo. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given up on Ava so easily and come back for Isabel. That woman, she had only ever loved Leo. She was just too proud to admit it. So she pretended to accept him to try and make Leo jealous. Who would have thought that Leo wouldn't take the bait and would instead agree to pursue Isabel? Everything that had happened was a joke. Isabel didn't know how she managed to walk out of the detention center. The sun was bright outside, but she couldn't feel its warmth. It was all a lie. She thought about the past 5 years, and a bitter, self-deprecating smile spread across her face. Fine, let this be her punishment. Let this be the consequence for not cherishing him. Leo was unaware of any of this. After giving his statement at the police station, he returned to the villa to find that Sean had decorated the place from top to bottom, ready for a party. Sean had wanted to invite some friends but was worried Leo wouldn't like it, so he had waited for him to get back. "Of course I don't mind. You guys can do whatever you want." "Really?" Sean's eyes lit up. "I'll go make some calls right now." He bounded upstairs. Ava was just coming out of the study. Her eyes met Leo's in the living room and they both smiled. "Is it over?" "Yeah, it's over." Leo hadn't felt this relaxed in a long time. "So what's next? Go back to the States or stay here? I'll follow your lead." After all, he was now an employee at Ava's company. She was his boss. But the woman didn't answer right away. She walked over slowly. "Are we talking about work all of a sudden?" "Yeah." "And what if I don't want to talk about work?" Ava looked at him, her expression full of a deep, indescribable affection. "Leo," she said, her voice soft, "I don't want to talk about work with you. I just want to talk about us. Do you want to talk?" Leo was taken aback. Then a gentle smile spread across his face. "Well, you could always try a little harder."